The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Saturday, July 12th. I hope everybody is having a fantastic weekend so far. And so we're not going to do a news show today. We do that during the week. But I thought maybe step back a little bit and get a little bit of perspective. You know, we get all this concrete, boom, 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 all this stuff happening, a lot of it bad, and most of it having to do with the Trump administration. And I thought it would be good just to step back. And I had a challenge in terms of how to name the show. I don't think the name's quite right. I don't think nationalism is quite what I want to say. We'll get to what I want to say in a minute. But anyway, the idea is, how do you make sense of tariffs and ICE and Doge and I don't know, they just what they did with the State Department, and you might some of it I agree with, right? I think probably cutting the State Department makes a lot of sense. Going after Harvard, universities, and everything else. How do you make sense? Not of everything. I don't think everything necessarily gets summed up in kind of one view of the world, although it's all related. Now you could say, and I think I do say this, and to some extent I think it's true. Well, I mean, it's just Trump. He's a crazy man. He's a bad man. He's he's motivated by hate, and he's very emotional, and he's motivated by emotions and all the stuff, and he just does it. And then he looks at MAGA and he kind of tests the sense of, where MAGA wants to go, and MAGA's motivated by all kinds of stuff, conspiracy theories, a lot of other stuff. And it's just kind of almost arbitrary, and a lot of noise, and a lot of it's just motivated by emotion and hate and anger and stupidity. And there's a sense in which that is true, I think, of Trump. But there's definitely a pattern here. There's definitely something going on. And I don't think the pattern is something we should attribute to Trump necessarily. But Trump, to a large extent, is kind of an empty, charismatic, go figure, charismatic vehicle for other people. Who I do think have a deeper, more intellectual, more ideas-oriented, more positive, not necessarily positive in the good sense, but positive in the sense of achieving something, agenda. Whether it's J.D. Vance, or it's Bannon, or it's Stephen Miller, or it's who knows who is back there kind of guiding the ship. It could be his son. I think Trump Jr. is more of a ideologically motivated than I think Trump himself is. So there definitely seems to be an agenda, and most of it is kind of negative. What do I mean by that? Initially I called the show anti-globalism, making sense of the Trump admin. And I think everything they do, if you understand what they mean by globalism, is geared towards an anti-globalist agenda. The problem with the term globalist is it's a package deal. It doesn't really mean anything. So that's why, and I wanted to argue that there's something positive behind it, nationalism, or a certain type of nationalism. I don't think nationalism captures it, because I think it's a particular type of nationalism. We've talked about this. It's kind of the blood and soil, J.D. Vance kind of a nationalism. But really, you could almost view it really, if you really wanted to integrate everything this administration is about, it really is what they consider globalist, an anti-globalist administration. They are motivated by destroying, disrupting, tearing down what they perceive as globalism. So what is globalism? What is it? I mean, it isn't really anything. But what it is a package deal. Package deal of what? What's a package deal of some legitimate good things? Primarily global trade, globalization, free movement, if you will, of goods, of capital, and of labor. It's the idea of freedom, not just on a national scale, but in a sense on an international scale, even when many of the countries you're dealing with are not free, but treating their citizens with the freedom, the rights that they kind of deserve. So it's globalization, and globalization, again, is this, it's primarily trade, but it's also capital, definitely capital. And, part of globalization is immigration. And add to that, as a consequence, one of the, I think, pretty amazing things about globalization is that because of this free movement of goods, of capital, of people, you also get a free movement of ideas. And one of the real positives about globalization is the extent to which, if you will, American ideas of liberty and freedom, to one extent or another, spread through the world. And they do. They do. I mean, would the free parts of Asia be as free as they are if not being exposed to America, if not being exposed to Western civilization, if not for globalization, right? Would Japan, South Korea, would Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, even Manila and the Philippines and to some extent Malaysia and Indonesia, there's definitely Western elements in all those places, and that is a consequence of globalization. So globalization is this cultural impact that I think ultimately good ideas have on the world. Bad ideas die out much easier. Now, that is part of what globalism is. That's the good part. But it's mixed in order to discredit it, because there are people who hate free trade. They hate free movement of capital. They particularly hate immigration. And they even hate cultural influence. Mixed in there in order to discredit globalization is the idea of global governance, global institutions, one world government, the United Nations, and then they rope into there justifiably, or in many cases unjustifiably, pretty much any other international organization they can think of, whether they're good or bad. World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, the IMF, the World Bank, everything just gets dumped into this big thing called globalism. And then add to that, so they hate that. They hate all of that, right? They hate all of that. And some of it's legitimate to hate. Like, it's legitimate to hate the idea of global governance and world government. And by the way, NATO's in there, and alliances with, Taiwan and Australia and the UK. International alliances are generally in there. UN. So again, a mixture. Some things good. You could argue in the big scale, NATO good. World Bank, IMF bad. Although in the scale of all bad things in the world, IMF and the World Bank don't rank as high as some other things. United Nations bad, in my book. World Health Organization, big parts of it bad, but there's a legitimate piece there that should exist. But you lose sight of all of that because it's all dumped into the same category, globalism. And then add to that is a disdain for those they label globalists. And who are they? Well, they are the cosmopolitans. Now, that is sometimes used as a fill-in word for the Jews, but I think it's broader than that. It really captures people who feel at home in different parts of the world, who like to travel, who enjoy other cultures, who maybe speak more than just English, and who have no problem going to China and going to Italy and going to Scandinavia and maybe even going to Africa and Middle East or whatever. Traveling, seeing the world, engaging with the world, participating. But of course, those people all lumped together with rich, educated leftist, because that's what rich, educated people tend to be, right? Leftist, Harvard, Ivy League, the elites, the experts, the people who know it all. And what this administration is motivated by more than anything else is hatred of all of that. A rejection of all of that, what they call the elite, which again is a package deal of legitimate experts and people who wield power over us and people who are illegitimate experts. I don't know, the people teaching gender studies at Harvard University. They're all lumped together. They're all stuck together as elites, another package deal. So, the Trump agenda is an anti-globalism, globalist agenda. What they hate is all of that. And you can see everything that they do is targeted at globalism, right? Again, at the component of globalism, the components that they think are in that concept. Again, it's a package deal. It's not. It's an anti-concept. It's bogus. There's almost nobody who actually believes in one world government. There's almost nobody who actually believes, there's a whole slew of people who believe in the UN, but believe in giving up huge amounts of sovereignty to international organizations. There's some people, but not that many. And a lot of us who believe in globalization don't believe in giving up American sovereignty are lumped in there. Because to them, it's all the same. To the Trumpists, it's all the same. And think about, everything that they do, right? I mean, all this tariff stuff. I mean, the tariff stuff is really there to destroy globalization. They hate the idea of the free movement of goods, the free movement of capital. I mean, they haven't yet gotten around to capital controls. It's a little sophisticated for them. It probably is hard for these people to get their heads around it. Most of them are not that smart, but they will get to it. They will get to those international money people. Again, Jews play a big role here because it's part of the mythology of all of this. It's part of this. Somebody has to be responsible for the globalism and the globalists and the elites, and Jews overrepresented in those places. So they'll get to the money cartels, the money trusts, the big money people. They'll get to that. They'll get to international money distorting the world. I mean, when all these tariffs and trade kind of cause harm, I wouldn't be surprised if they turned and blamed the bankers, right? And international bankers, not just American bankers. And I don't know that we're going to get capital controls in the U.S., but would Bannon and J.D. Vance and Trump object to capital controls? Probably not. And could you imagine the right circumstances? Interest rates are going through the roof. It's very hard to sell U.S. debt. Nobody wants to buy it. And the government is facing the possibility of default. And they have no option but to inflate in order to reduce the value of all that debt. And in order to prevent, in a sense, capital flight, they impose certain capital controls on Americans. I mean, it's happened before. We've had a variety of different capital controls in our past. You remember that it was illegal, literally illegal, go to jail, to own gold if you're an American in America from 1933 until 1971, I think it was. It was illegal in the United States of America to own gold. So 40 years, almost 40 years, it was illegal. So, is some kind of capital control preventing capital flight really an impossibility? So they hate trade. And, these capricious, mindless, economically ignorant tariffs are basically meant to disrupt trade. I mean, there's nothing positive here. Raise revenue, I guess, by means of taxing Americans, which they're doing. Revenue from tariffs are hitting all record levels because prices are going up and we're paying taxes. But the goal ultimately, beyond revenue, it's not reindustrialization. It's not anything else other than destroy trade, disrupt global trade. All this stuff of buying stuff made in, that's just wrong. It's those globalists hold that. That's just disgusting. And of course, the flip side of globalism, as they see it, the positive that they're fighting for, is blood and soil nationalism. I mean, you can imagine a better form of nationalism, really thinking about, what is good for America in a sense of, individual rights and in a sense of freedom and liberty. But this is blood and soil nationalism. And again, the most explicit guy about this is J.D. Vance. America is not about an idea. Indeed, the whole idea of individual rights in J.D. Vance's rhetoric, the whole idea of the Declaration of Independence is a leftist manifesto. It's a leftist idea. The idea of the Declaration of Independence leads directly to trans rights, to trans women playing in men's sport. That, which is the thing that upsets them more than anything else, that is a consequence of the Declaration of Independence in their view. It leads to woke. The people who are woke are the direct descendants of Thomas Jefferson in J.D. Vance's mind. And given that they hate woke is out, woke is bad, woke is evil, well, then, of course, the Declaration's out. Can be a nation of ideas. I mean, God, then all those people who share our ideas with us might want to come to America, and we can't have that. America is a land, American nationalism is about blood and soil. It's about being born here. It's about the spilt blood. I mean, this is all about your descendants fought for this country, a civil war, and their blood is in the soil, right? They don't even mention World War II because blood is somebody else's soil, but because that was a war fought in Europe. They're not even sure we should have entered that war, right? So the Civil War and the War of Independence, those are the wars they mention. And both sides in the Civil War, because the blood is soaked into the soil of America. And I remember years ago when Tucker Carlson was still at Fox and semi-sane, that I did a whole show on his segment where he said, what's unique about America, three things. One of them was scenery. It's a beautiful place. And the second one was something about God, some relationship Americans have with God that's unique. That's the kind of nationalism I'm talking about. The nationalism of blood and soil. And that's the flip side of hating on everything that is globalist. And I think Trump is primarily motivated by hate. He has a vague notion of America, but even for him, America is not exceptional. It's not special ideologically or politically or in its actions in history or in its protection of rights or anything like that. There's nothing exceptional. He's just like Obama in thinking there's nothing special about America. But it's his country. He was born here. And therefore, he's patriotic. Remember when he came back from NATO this last time? He was so impressed by the other leaders. Why was he impressed by the other leaders? Because they all expressed a real love of their own country. They all loved their own country. And that's what impressed him. Their patriotism. Maybe their nationalism. Because that impresses him. And that it's, by the way, why he likes, one of the reasons, many reasons he likes Putin. Putin's a patriot in a perverse sense. He's a nationalist. And Putin's a blood and soil nationalist. And look, blood and soil is not just a materialistic thing. It's a spiritual thing. We Americans, there's a spirit that has come to us from past generation and imbued us with a certain, there's a truth to that. It's called American sense of life. And the Russians have a spirit to them, and Putin talks about that a lot. Anyway, that's kind of the positive, but what do you do with that? Some blood and soil nationalists. What do I go and do? Well, what you do is you separate yourself. You reject all foreign influences, foreign goods, foreign capital, foreigners. Everything to do with foreigners, you reject. Anything to do with globalists, you reject. Anything to do with these elites, you reject, because they love the international, they love the global, they love all these things that you hate, that you think go against the very nature of your positive idea. So Trump is motivated by wanting to destroy trade. He wants to destroy trade, and he thinks the consequence of that, think is a strong word, but he feels that a consequence of that will be reshoring, building in America. And it's true. Look, if you tomorrow had an embargo, banned trade with the rest of the world, just banned it, 1,000% tariff on everybody, then whatever Americans needed would have to be made in America. Now, standard of living would plummet. Costs would go up dramatically. Our real income would decline. But ultimately, we would make all the stuff here in the U.S. It wouldn't be as good, but we would make it. We would reshore those manufacturing jobs. So that would be the outcome. It would be horrible if you care about quality of life, standard of living. But they don't. That's not part of the nationalism vision. It's not about being wealthy. It's not about being rich. It's not about having nice stuff, as Trump told us. So you'll only have $1, not 30. And I think he was serious. Now, he will have as many dollars as he wants, but partially, there's a lot of people out there who believe, a lot of people on the right who believe, material wealth spoils you. It weakens you. It makes you less of a man. Struggling and having less material goods is good for you. It makes you tougher. It strengthens you. So they want to crush trade. And if in the process they crush your standard of living, they crush your quality of life, they don't really care. Now, Trump cares somewhat. Again, Trump's not an ideologue here. Trump cares because he doesn't want to look bad. He doesn't want you to think ill of him. He doesn't want the markets to think ill of him. He doesn't want other businessmen to think ill of him. So he's moderated by his narcissism. His narcissism moderates him, if that makes any sense. And, it's not accidental that they have this vicious attitude towards immigrants. A police state viciousness. They don't care if they send innocent people to jail forever in El Salvador. They're foreigners. Even if they're legally in the U.S., Clearly they're foreigners. They're not American. They're not blood and soil American. They really, everything about this administration projects, we don't care. We just don't care about you. We don't, there are very few people we care about. And if you're an immigrant, first generation, second generation, we just don't care about you. If you're visiting the United States, we don't care about you. If you're a student coming to study in the United States, we don't care about you. I mean, we might let you stay if we think it's somehow in our interest. But we really don't care about you. We don't think you have any rights. Due process? You gotta be kidding me. You're an illegal immigrant. What due process do you have? You're not one of us. Only we get due process. Right? So, they despise immigrants. They want them out. And anything to do with foreigners, like if you're not coming here and groveling and thanking and admitting American superiority and playing at not just to Trump's narcissism, but to the whole nationalist agenda of we are the most powerful country in the world and you better be nice to us, then you get treated like shit. And then, you know, I'm against foreign aid. We should cut foreign aid to zero across the board. But they glee in eliminating foreign aid as the first thing that they do. First thing that they do. Like, you know, Doge goes in there and we're going to cut $2 trillion, but we're going to start by cutting all the foreign aid. Well, not all of it. Most of it. And we're going to cut the foreign service. You know, the gazillion bureaucrats that need to be fired. Massive reduction should be happening in all the regulatory agencies. But we're going to cut, you know, I don't know, 15, 20% of the State Department as the first thing, one of the first things we do. And of course, we're out of the World Health Organization. We're out of the World Trade Organization. That's finished. The tariffs have violated every treaty we signed under the WTO. And foreign students, visas, you know, we'll see who we treat. And then, of course, you've got all those cosmopolitan elites at Harvard, at universities, at Ivy Leagues. We're going to get rid of them. And then you got experts. We don't like experts. Experts are part of those elites. So we're going to cut their research funding. Again, I don't think government should fund research. But as the first thing to cut, or among the first things to cut, and you know, we can't trust experts. We can't trust anybody who is part of this elite, part of this cosmopolitan elite. They're globalists. You know, the anti-nationalist agenda. They're very anti-blood and soil. So yeah, they're not going to get any help from us. And let's just appoint some crazy nut to run healthcare in the United States, and he can dismantle the elites when it comes to healthcare. And we've got the perfect excuse to do that because COVID. And it's all lumped together. And of course, you know, so what really drives this administration is a sort of nihilism that is motivated by this anti-globalism, anti-elites. Just knock it all down. Don't replace it with anything. There's no positive values we're going to attain. All in the name blood and soil nationalism, which doesn't add up to anything. It's a meaningless concept, and it's certainly not in the interests of individual Americans. But individual Americans don't matter. What matters is we rip down, we tear apart, we shred those things that we hate, and those things that in a way of what we believe is this blood and soil ideal, which, you know, they never quite articulate. They never quite explain what it exactly implies. But when you see, 10,000 ICE agents in military gear running around the streets of America, harassing people who the administration doesn't like, you kind of get a sense of what they mean by blood and soil, nationalism. So while it all seems random, I mean, even the pro-energy stuff, right? Even the pro-energy stuff, I don't think is motivated by a love of freedom. Now, I'm not saying this is true of the Secretary of the Energy or any particular person in the administration, but the key people, the MAGA people, the Bannons, the Millers, the Hegseths, I think, the people in the MAGA world, they don't care about freedom. They don't care about the freedom of producers to be able to produce. I mean, note the complete meltdown. The MAGA had when Senator Lee, one of their own, proposed to sell off a tiny little fraction of all the land the federal government owns west of the Mississippi. A tiny fraction. They melted down. This is our soil. Our blood is in this soil. What about my kids and my grandkids? It's their soil. You can't privatize it. I mean, privatization is give it to individuals, use it, build on it, develop it. You can't have that. That's anti-American, we were told. Complete meltdown. They're like the left. Don't develop that land. That land's America. It goes back to Tucker Carlson. America is a beautiful land. It's a land of beauty. So, blood and soil. They're not interested, again, in development and economic success. So, for example, energy, freedom and energy, liberating energy. Why do they want that? They want it so America can be self-sufficient. They want it because they want to not be reliant, not have to trade for energy. They want it so it's all made in America. If they thought that nationalizing it all would be better, they would nationalize it all. They're not. It's not an administration that loves energy because they love freedom. An administration that's pro-freedom and energy because America needs energy, and better to have American energy than foreign energy. Foreign energy, ooh, we don't want foreign stuff. We don't like foreign stuff. And even to the extent that they deregulate business, the deregulation is going to be completely kind of utilitarian. They'll deregulate because, that'll increase economic activity so we can, raise more taxes, so we can spend more, so we can close this deficit. They talk a lot about we need economic growth. Why do you need economic growth? Because that way we'll be able to close the deficit. We'll be able to pay the debts. Not because economic growth is what facilitates higher standard of living and high quality of life for you, individual people who live in this country. That's not how they think. So the Trump administration, while Trump is non-intellectual, while Trump has no positive intellectual agenda, is motivated by positive intellectual agenda that it's not a real positive, and as a consequence, is nihilistic basically in what it does. It's destroying trade. I mean, the goal is ultimately zero immigration. Again, I don't think Trump's goal is, but if you listen to Bannon, absolutely. And get rid of Elon Musk. Send him back to South Africa. They would like to send, us immigrants back to wherever we came from. USAID and cutting whatever Doge did was not about cutting government spending. It's about getting rid of those globalists in government. Get rid of USAID, get rid of support for any of the causes that might somehow be associated with elites, with leftists, with globalists, with something that smacks of international. The hatred of Ukraine and their support for Russia, same thing. Same thing. Those went after all the woke stuff. It went after trans stuff. It didn't go after cutting spending. It didn't cut any spending. Almost nothing. It's just a program to destroy the things they don't like in the name of a blood and soul nationalism that at the end means nothing to them because it's a bogus concept. It's an empty idea. So, yeah, I mean, and of course, blood and soil, necessitates a level of xenophobia, and it plays into every kind of racism and anti-Semitism and anti-whatever, that exists out there. It plays into all of that. If they could figure out a way to get rid of certain populations who are American for many, many generations, then they would do it. They just don't have any way to do it. They haven't figured it out how to do it. And again, I don't think Trump has this. Trump facilitates this. He makes it possible because he's leans in that direction. He's just not he's not intellectual. He's not ideological. He's kind of an empty vessel that is, that facilitates this nihilistic tendencies. So, yeah, I mean, it's only, I mean, the good thing is, I'll end with the good thing. The good thing is that the American people are not, in my view, buying into this. An overwhelming majority of them, at least according to the poll I gave you yesterday, supports immigration. Overwhelming majority of them don't like the actions of ICE. Overwhelming majority of Americans don't like these tariffs, and I think that'll get even worse. A majority of Americans don't get this nationalism stuff. They want a good life. They want to make more money. They want their children to have more opportunities than they did. They want people to succeed. They want to succeed. They want people they know to succeed. They want their neighbors to succeed. The American people maybe don't have quite the sense of life they used to, but there's still that basic decency, that basic goodness, and some sense of individualism, buried with a lot of tribalism. But, MAGA is not 50% of the country. The wacky left is not 50% of the country. The big chunk of the population is ideologically homeless and kind of a mixed economy, mixed ideology, mixed everything. No principles, no home. But they're not nihilists. They're not predominantly haters. They, you can find them all over the world. They love to travel. They like other countries. They like to see the world. And while they reject woke, and they don't know what to do about these experts, because the experts indeed did deceive them and lie to them during COVID, they don't exactly know how to deal with all this, but they're not buying into what Trump's selling. They're certainly not buying into what MAGA is selling. They're not buying into J.D. Vance so far. They're not buying into, Steve Bannon. He's got support of millions, but we're a country of 350 million. And, Trump's approval ratings are really, really, really low. I mean, the lowest any president has ever had at this point in his presidency. with one exception. Trump version 1. They just don't like what he's doing. They don't like this nihilistic trend. I think Americans are grown up enough, serious enough, to respond to a real conversation about cutting government spending, even, reductions in healthcare spending and things like that. But what they don't want is just slash and burn tactics of the big, beautiful bill or of Doge, which at the end didn't even really slash and burn much. So, yeah, this is pretty, so this is, I think, at the heart of what Trump is about and what he is. All right. Let me just see something. All right, let's see. Let's see. All right, so that is my summary of kind of a lot of the news stories we've had recently. Pretty bleak. I think we live in pretty bleak times, pretty horrific times. And I'm just, one second, what is this? That's weird. I'm looking something up here, and it keeps giving me weird info. Okay. Okay. God, what did I do? My keyboard has shifted to writing in Hebrew. How do I change that back? Anybody know how I change that back? I did something on my keyboard that makes it write in Hebrew. Huh. All right. Maybe that's part of my, globalist thing. Yeah, how do you get rid of it? There must be like a combination of keys that I hit by accident that switch the language, and I have no idea how you switch back. I know how to do it on an iPhone, but I have no idea how to do it here. Let's see. You guys are not helping. Okay. It's Google Genius AI. Alt Shift? Just Alt Shift? What's Alt? Where's Alt? There's no Alt. Option Shift? No, that's not it. Yeah, yours was for Windows. Anybody have a Mac and who knows? Ask AI. I can't ask the AI. I can't type in because I'd have to type in Hebrew, and my keyboard's not a Hebrew keyboard, so I have no idea how I would even type it. Wow. It never happened to me before. So if one of you can ask AI or ask something and let me know in the chat how I can change my keyboard around. For now, I guess I'll just manage with a mouse. Yep. Huh. AI is better. Ask Google. Yeah. choose Apple menu, system settings, clicking keyboard. Okay, here we go. All right, sorry guys, give me a second, and let me just fix my keyboard, and then we can go back to this. Okay, where's keyboard now? Here, accessibility, appearance, control panel, desktop, and dock, display, focus, lock screen, privacy. All right, it's system setting, keyboard. Where's there's keyboard. Okay, keyboard. And then text input, then click edit. Edit. The only thing checked there is American English. I mean, Hebrew is unchecked. It's not even checked. That is so bizarre. Like somebody has taken over my computer. Really bizarre. Languages, only English is there. There's nothing else. Shortcuts off. Ask Siri, set up keyboard. All right. Okay, edit. Okay, now it says US and Hebrew. How do I get rid of the Hebrew? Done. Okay, now let's see. Nope. Oh God, I need the keyboard in order to keep going. Edit. Let's unclick that. Ask Siri, shortcuts, automatic. All right, if I can't get it, we'll do it without a keyboard. I'll somehow try to manage it. Micro news, shortcuts, auto punctuation. Anybody else have uncheck and recheck? I did that. Weird. Try control plus space on the keyboard. Control space. Nope, same thing. Still Hebrew. I mean, my guess is I'm going to have to restart the computer. But I don't want to do that because you guys are here, so that would be no good if I restarted the computer. Keyboard shortcuts. Turn dock, hide off, display. Keyboard. Change the way tab, change access to, change menu, change dock. Input text, input source, US and Hebrew. How do I get rid of the Hebrew? Okay. Text replacements. Edit. Show input menu, menu bar, caps, automatic switch, documents. Something here. Oh, wow. Okay, fixed it. Weird. I've never seen that. There's something on the menu bar right at the top that has US Hebrew. Why would I even have Hebrew? I never use Hebrew. All right. It's fixed. Yeah. All right, let's go to your questions. Wow. All right. Super chats. Let's go to the super chat. Let me move that out of the way. Let's move this out of there. Let's move that over there. All right, guys. Sorry about that. That was wasted a lot of your time, and I apologize for it. Let's jump in here with Andrew, who has a $50 question. Thank you, Andrew. Very much appreciate it. Andrew says, what are the connections between epistemology and morality? How does selfishness flow from objectivist epistemology? Yeah, I'm glad you put $50 on that one, because that is not a simple question. I mean, basically, one has to, in a sense, before epistemology, one has to ask the question regarding the nature of man. What is man? And, how does man know? How do we know? That's an epistemological question. What is the nature of man? And, we metaphysically and epistemologically, man is the rational animal. Reason, this is the epistemological point, is man's basic means of survival. And importantly here, only the individual is capable of reasoning. So reason is man's basic means of survival. That is an epistemological point. Reason is a means of knowledge. That's an epistemological point. Man is a rational animal. That is the nature of man. And now the question is, how should man live given that nature, given reason as his means for knowledge? Well, first, one has to look to reason in man's nature to figure out how man should live. That is, one should derive whatever morality comes to from reason. You can't. So, for example, if you hold a Platonic epistemology, right? Truth is revealed in some way, right? One way or the other, truth is revealed. Then morality, the way you discover morality is through a revelation. Is through communing with the world of forms, the world of spirits, or something like that, right? So epistemology, a correct epistemology, already is setting the terms for, no, that's not the right way to discover any truth. And, morality is no different. You have to use reason. You have to be rational in seeking a morality. And then, of course, what is the unit that thinks? What is the unit that survives? That is the individual facing this alternative between life and death, existence or non-existence. What is the means by which that individual survives? Well, by using his means of survival, by using his reason. And now you've started thinking morally, right? What should man do? He should use his means of survival, because the goal of morality is to teach you how to survive. Well, how to survive? Think. Use your mind. So they're completely integrated, right? Epistemology, the objectivist epistemology and the objectivist morality, completely integrated. And you cannot really, without the conception of reason, you cannot really have a proper conception of egoism. You're floundering. You don't know where to go with morality. Where does morality come from? Okay, even if you get to the point of survival, well, how does man survive? I don't know. How would I even discover that? If you know Yuval Noah Harari, where you survive by collaborating, by communicating with other people. So other people are important to your own survival. I mean, you're floundering. You don't know where you're going. If you don't get the idea of reason as your basic means of survival, there's nowhere to go in morality. And certainly you can't get a comprehensive, tightly knit, objective, powerful moral code like what Ayn Rand develops. All really oriented around this idea of reason as man's basic means of survival. All oriented around the idea of man as a rational being. Oriented around the idea about, in order to survive, you have to think. And you have to have a purpose and you have to have self-esteem. But first and foremost, you have to think. You have to use your mind. So that is the connection. How does selfishness flow from objectivist epistemology? Well, I mean, at the most basic level, if reason, if reason is the way, to survive, well, the way for whom to survive, for what to survive, for the individual entity to survive. And there is no collective consciousness. There is no collective reasoning. There is nobody can do the surviving for me. To survive as a conceptual being, I have to survive by using reason myself. So again, it's completely integrated, the idea of reason and selfishness. Reason is a capability of an individual. It's a capability of an individual mind. It's what allows us to, in politics, to say men should be free. Why should men be free? Because they have a mind for themselves. If you could convince somebody that, if you could convince us that men are not rational, that they're not capable of reasoning, well then how freedom loses any meaning, right? Because now they cannot survive by themselves. If only some people, like Eric Weinstein, I think, believes, yeah, some people can reason, some people there's some people who should be left alone because they can reason and they can think and they deserve to be free. But everybody else is completely dependent on those people, not in the dependent sense of as a trader, as Ayn Rand sees our dependence on genius, but completely dependent. They have no capacity to reason. They cannot produce. They cannot create. They need to be controlled. They need to be told what to do. And indeed, some of us are so smart that we know better how they should live. So the whole idea of freedom is the idea that individuals have the capacity to live for themselves, the capacity to think for themselves, the capacity to reason for themselves, the capacity to be independent at whatever level of intelligence they have. They can still make decisions for themselves based on reason. That is not just so that is the basis of egoism, that capacity that we all have. We have the capacity to survive as human beings. Again, if your capacity to survive is completely dependent on the tribe, as some people believe, not on your own reasoning capability, if somehow the tribe produces truth and production and stuff to live by, then egoism's, you can't come up with that morality. It's only an epistemology that says, no, man, individual man, has this amazing capacity that no other animal has to reason, to think, to integrate what he observes, integrate the evidence of his senses into new knowledge to use logic. Only then can you say, and that's, by the way, and that's how he survives. That's how he thrives. That's the means by which he lives. Well, it's the means by which an individual lives. The individual should have, the way he should pursue his survival is by living that kind of life, a life of reason. All right, hopefully that's clarifying. I always feel like my answers to that question, you keep asking that same question, Andrew, from different perspectives, and I keep answering it, and you keep asking it, which I suspect is I'm not giving a good enough answer. We should ask like Greg or something. I mean, maybe we have, but we should, should ask some of our philosophers and let them answer it as well, because you seem to be struggling with it, and you don't seem satisfied with my answer. Anyway, thank you, Andrew. $50, really appreciate it. Frank, the market fragility of the U.S. dollar, deficit spending, and its effects on the balance of trade, and therefore asset ownership from foreigners, isn't the source of this nationalism a consequence of the abuse of our fiat dollar coming to a head? I mean, that's part of it, but no, it's a much more complex story. I don't think all of this is all of this comes from fiat money. Fiat money is one of the many things, and indeed fiat money is a consequence of other things that are going on. I've done shows, I've given talks, I've really laying this out. I think my talk last year at Ocon about the state of politics today, where I lay out kind of the history of the 21st century. I mean, this is a consequence of 9/11 and our failure to respond appropriately. It's a consequence of unwillingness to attack, to blame Islam for 9/11 and to declare, the enemy after 9/11 and to go after the right enemy, the lies of our elites and our political leaders, the lies of our generals in Afghanistan and in Iraq and everything that had to do with that. It's a consequence of kind of America going out there into the world and failing in Iraq, failing in Afghanistan, failing by every measure, not just by the standard that was set by the people who did it, but by any measure. Americans getting killed for nothing, and Americans from a certain background getting killed, while other Americans sit at home BSing us about, the altruistic virtue of bringing democracy to the Middle East. It's a consequence of the financial crisis, of, bailing out banks and CEOs and companies and foreign companies and the sense that, again, our experts, our elites had no clue what they were doing. They didn't know we were in a recession. They didn't know what the bailouts would do. They didn't know how to respond. They panicked. They had no clue what they were doing in the great financial crisis. And people resent that. And of course, when all of that was blamed on capitalism, yeah, people bought into that. So the Tea Party learned to hate capitalism, and Occupy Wall Street hated capitalism, and now MAGA hates capitalism. The right and the left are united in the hatred of capitalism. And that, I think, to a large extent, again, not uniquely, but as a key moment in our history, the financial crisis really was a pivot point. I mean, there was already hatred of capitalism before that, suspicion of capitalism. But there was a lot in America that just, but we like this. But because the financial crisis was blamed on capitalism, even though there's no capitalism there, it just entrenched that feeling. And again, that dislike, disrespect, distrust of experts, of elites, was just reinforced by the financial crisis. And then COVID. Again, our political leaders panicked. They had no clue what to do. They had plans. They threw them out. They winged it. They locked us up. They again, offered all kinds of weird remedies, and there was disagreement, and nobody knew what was true and what wasn't true. And some experts lied about the origins of the virus. Other experts lied about masks, and other experts lied about lockups, and it was just a disaster. And American people now, we don't trust anybody. We can't trust them on foreign policy. We cannot trust them on economics. And we cannot trust them on health. What's left? So let's elect the person who is most likely to basically get rid of all those people we don't trust. And in a sense, start over. With what? I don't know. We don't know. We have no idea what to start over with. But let's maybe focus on ourselves. Let's focus on other people. Let's stop going to wars like we did after 9/11, even though what was the option? Let's get rid of this globalization that probably caused the financial crisis and clearly took away American jobs. No, it didn't, and there's no proof of that. And destroyed our earning power, and there's no proof of that, and that didn't happen. But we feel like that. We feel, and the experts have told us that's what happened. So, let's throw it all out, and let's revert to some sense of, what's the most primitive sense the way we can all feel safe and feel together? We've talked about this, about tribalism. When you give up on reason, when you give up on facts, when you give up on, when nothing makes sense, where everybody's betrayed you, where everybody's abandoned you, then you huddle up in collectives. You become tribal. You look for authorities, new authorities, different authorities that want to get rid of those elites to tell you what to do and how to do it. So it makes complete sense. I mean, populism, the kind of populism we have today, the kind of mindlessness, is a direct consequence of the failure of our intellectuals over the last 100 years to explain what is going on in the world. And in particular, in the 21st century, over the last 25 years, to explain what has happened. Dramatic things happened to us. And all the explanations have led us, all the explanations the intellectuals gave us have led us to this point, not to trust them, and yet to accept their explanations, to accept what they said. We don't trust them, but they said it was about capitalism. Yeah, that makes sense to us. So reject everything there was. And now we're at the point where the right is rejecting the founding fathers, rejecting the founding principles of this country. The principles. And that's the blood and soil. That's the blood and soil nationalism. And it's un-American. It's disgusting. And most Americans don't buy it, luckily. And when they do, when most Americans do buy it, then it's the end of this country as a significant, meaningful place. All right. All right, let's go Shahzbot. Shahzbot, reporting live from Madison Square Garden. Weird Al's Bigger and Weirder 2025 tour. I'm in row 21. Wow. All right, I have no idea what Weird Al's Bigger and Weirder 2025 tour is. It sounds weird. Shahzbot is there, so I'm sure it's weird. But I'm sure it's also fun. So have a great time, Shahzbot. Thank you for the support. Liam, will Trump take his foot off the gas of ICE the way he's done with tariffs? Has he done that with tariffs? Really? I didn't notice he did it with tariffs. He took it up but then put it back on. How do you see him managing the clash between the business community that he respects and his idiot racist base who wants this? I think he'll keep doing it until he can tell his base that it was a success. And it's, look, the same with tariffs, right? He hasn't let the foot off the gas. What do you call it? 50% tariffs on Brazil is not letting it off the gas. It's lower than it was. For some countries, it's lower than it was in April, but overall, it's not significantly lower. You kind of deal with China, which is lower a little bit, but none of it's significant. It's not. He just did 35% on Canada. That's higher than what it was in April. So he hasn't let off the gas. I think with immigration, he's going to keep his foot on the gas until he gets a sense that the population is turning against him. It's hurting him politically, and a significant number of what would you call it? A significant number of his business base starts complaining about it. But by that point, he'll be able to say, I deported 1 million illegal immigrants, and we'll continue. We'll just do it differently, but we're going to continue. We're still committed to this. And maybe the courts will hold him back. Maybe that'll stop him. It's hard to tell. But he's going to, he's going to keep at it. He's not going to stop. And he's not stopping with tariffs. And he's not stopping with Harvard. They're doubling up with Harvard, going after Harvard. They're not, the only place they're stopping is when the courts stop them. So far, he doesn't care about the approval ratings. I mean, the only thing that's rattled MAGA so far, the only thing that's rattled them is the Jeffrey Epstein thing. That's the only thing that has rattled MAGA. And Trump did a long post today about stop talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Think of all the great successes we're having. Why do you keep going back to Jeffrey Epstein? And they don't care. That's the thing that really animates them. They are convinced there's some big conspiracy of pedophiles that are running the world, and that are that unless they get at, they cannot. This is the ultimate cabal that is running the elites, which runs the globalists. And they either want to blame it on Israel. Jeffrey Epstein was an Israeli agent, or they want to blame it on some, again, cabal of pedophiles. And they need that. That is their ultimate conspiracy theory explanation for everything. And they'll never be satisfied. They'll never be satisfied. And he doesn't get that animates so many of his people. They need this conspiracy theory to be true to justify every other conspiracy theory. So it doesn't matter what he produces. It doesn't matter how many documents he produces. They will always believe in it because they need to. They need an explanation. Conspiracy theories need explanations. They provide explanations. And, I told you the joke of, you get to God and you ask God, you're in heaven and you ask God, okay, so who has the Jeffrey Epstein black book? And God says, no, there was never a black book. And, the response of a MAGA person is, wow, this conspiracy really goes deep. Even God's in on it. I think that joke is super revealing. But the reason is that they need an explanation. They need to blame somebody. And that's the ultimate explanation. In the meantime, they'll go after the immigrants, and they'll go after trade, and they'll go after the elites. But it's not enough. They need to keep knocking stuff down. They need to keep the destruction going. It's a real nihilistic movement that needs hate and destruction and to view certain people as what gets more evil than pedophilia? They need to believe that there are really, really, really evil people behind the mess that we're in, because they can't explain the mess that we're in. They don't understand it. It's an orgy of altruism. It's collectivism. It's an epistemology of faith. That's way over their head. They don't get the role of ideas in history. They have no clue. So they're desperate for Satan to present himself, and that's an easy explanation. Why do I feel the world is in such shitty condition? Satan did it. Well, that's easy. That's straightforward. That is completely understandable. And they're close to getting Satan. They're this close. And Trump won't let him have it. It's super frustrating for them. All right, let's see. Liam. Oh, by the way, that was, yes, I answered that question. All right. By the way, I will be doing a members-only show tomorrow. It'll be about money. I'll post the time and everything tomorrow, so I'll let you know exactly what it's going to be. But tomorrow evening, I will do a show for members only. Members only. Troy came in with 500 Australian dollars. Thank you, Troy. Really, really appreciate it. That is great. That makes my weekend. So that is fantastic. If I'm on this, let's see if we had other stickers. Thank you, Esoteric Dichotomy. And thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Anonymous User. And I think I saw Jonathan Honing way up there somewhere. Yes, thank you, Jonathan Honing, who started us off. And thank you, Bonnie. Yep. All right. Fizzled says, watched a Turning Point USA event for kicks. Don't waste your time. And Tucker Carlson has the amazing ability to talk out of both sides of his mouth in a convincing way to make it believable and gullible, believable and the gullible to eat it up. Yeah, I mean, I saw clips of his talk. I forget now what it was that he was talking about. But it was, it was just disgusting and horrible. I mean, Tucker's really, really bad guy. Really, really, really bad guy. It's, yeah. I can't believe I forgot the topic he was discussing. But yeah, maybe it was Epstein. Maybe it was Epstein and his connection to Israel. Yeah. Somebody says, maybe Yaron can become a YAF speaker someday. That's pretty funny. I spoke at Turning Point USA. I spoke at Turning Point USA in 2016. And then never again. As soon as Trump was elected, that was it. I spoke the summer of 2016, I think it was. I spoke at Turning Point USA National Convention at it was in I think West Palm Beach or somewhere like that. And then I've spoken for YAF. I've spoken to YAF in the past, but it won't happen again. It doesn't happen again. Yeah, it was Epstein and Mossad. That's what I saw the clip of. Hopper Campbell, two-part question. Part one. In response to your comments yesterday, if we organized an objectivist anti-ICE protest, it wouldn't have to be rights violating by blocking traffic. We could do it in Central Park or in front of the White House. Where's part two? Hopper Campbell. There it is. Antifa could never co-opt it because they would be turned off by the Ayn Rand was right signs. At this point, we are undercutting our own movement by not organizing physical space. That is so not right. Sorry, Hopper. Antifa would be turned off by Ayn Rand. They'd come over and they'd knock the Ayn Rand sign out. They'd wear their black thing. There are many more of them than us. They would wrap the Ayn Rand sign up with flags of the Hamas and wave around kafirs. And we would be demonstrating together with Antifa. They don't care if we're there. They love it that we're there because they realize that us being there gives them a sanction. So, of course, they would take it over. And I don't believe you need a physical space. Kant did not take over the world by occupying physical space. Marxism did not take over the world by demonstrating. This is an intellectual philosophical battle. You don't make intellectual philosophical points by standing in the street holding signs. And particularly not, again, if you are being affiliated, unintentionally, but still, with the Antifas and the crazies of the world. I'll also add that I think even in Central Park, doing a demonstration in Central Park, I think is violating people's rights. People go to Central Park to have a picnic, to relax, to have a run, to bicycle, not to be yelled at, not to be confronted with a mass of people blocking the way, not to be intruded by science. Now, okay, I'm willing to, the one place I think demonstrations are appropriate are in front of political institutions. I know, Washington, D.C., in front of Congress, at the White House, sure. But what would 1,000 objectivists, if you could get 1,000 objectivists, standing in front of the White House with signs Ayn Rand was right, achieve? I'll tell you what it'll achieve. Nothing. I mean, I was at a big demonstration. I was at the big Tea Party demonstration in 2010. 500,000 people in front of Congress. I spoke to over 500,000 people. There were lots of signs. Ayn Rand was right. And what did that achieve? What did the Tea Party achieve? Because it's a mass movement, and mass movements like that in physical space get co-opted, and they do nothing. So the draft got rescinded because of an intellectual argument. The draft got rescinded because of Ayn Rand and Milton Friedman. Not because of the riots in the schools, in the universities, but because of an intellectual battle that was happening. And, you know, the members of the committee to look at the draft were heavily influenced by arguments that Ayn Rand made and Milton Friedman was making at the time, and they got rescinded. The student demonstrations, you know, went on for a long time before the draft was rescinded. The draft was rescinded once the intellectual argument was solidified. Now, look, I'm not against, in times of desperation, where you think you can get large numbers and where you think civil disobedience is the only way to achieve your goal, I'm not against doing that. So I'm not against the civil rights movement doing what they did. I'm not against the anti-war movement, although they were, you know, I'm actually, yes, against the anti-war movement. But I'm not against the civil rights movement because their cause was a good cause. It was a right cause. And they were desperate. They were being, you know, they were being lynched. And they were getting nowhere. And they were willing to accept the consequences, sitting in jail. And they made the intellectual argument. And they fought in the intellectual space. But, you know, and they had reached a point where they could win. But win nothing. You get, you know, if you get 1,000 objectivists, it does nothing. What does it do? I mean, it's so much more important to speak up, to make your opinion heard, even to write letters to the editor, to write op-eds, to go on your local radio show and discuss ideas, to make the argument than it is to show up as a mass of individualists making an argument. It reaches nobody, it goes nowhere. I mean, Ayn Rand Institute was involved in demonstrations for Elia Gonzalez, and what did we get? Nothing. Very little. So, you want to do something? Do what Ayn Rand said you should do. And what should you do? Write, speak, stand up, disagree, make your voice heard. Don't go into the streets. It's way too early for that. Way too early for that. But it's not too early to speak up. Get involved in politics. Join the Republican Party and go bash some heads, right? Challenge them. Fine. Go stand up on a debate thing for city council or whatever and articulate capitalist ideas. But going out in the streets, what exactly are you going to get from that? And by the way, nobody is stopping you from doing it. You know, go do it. But don't pretend that it's achieving much, because it's not. At least that's the conclusion we've come to at the Institute. That's the conclusion I've come to. So I'm not embracing it. The Institute's not embracing it. Other people want to embrace it. Go for it. But it's just not helpful. Again, there are much better ways to help get your Yaron Brook show in front of an additional 100 people by sharing the show, by liking the show, by chatting, by doing stuff, by putting it on Twitter, by going on Facebook, by doing all that. You'll get to a lot more people by spreading the Yaron Brook show or material from the Ayn Rand Institute or Ayn Rand's lectures. There's so many great interviews of Ayn Rand on YouTube. How often have you shared those on your Twitter and Facebook pages? I mean, and it's not just that the people who you're friends with on Facebook will see it, but by you sharing it, you upgrade it in the algorithm and more people will be exposed to it. So if you really want to engage in activism, if you really want to get our voice heard, then go find Ayn Rand material online and share it and like it and share it and like it and like it and share it and get dramatic, significant exposure to it. And that'll do more, 1,000 times more, because now you can get to hundreds of thousands of people than any demonstration will do. Again, not only was I at the 500,000 person event, and I don't regret doing it, and I'm sure it did some good, but right before the event, I did a long segment from there with the audience, with 500,000 people in my background, with Glenn Beck on Fox in the days when he was huge on Fox. So I had millions of people watching me on Fox. And I did that regularly. And I'm sure we're better for it. I'm sure we've grown a little bit because of it. Everybody sees your posts. And the reality is that even if nobody sees your posts, the very fact that you posted on a topic is picked up by the algorithm, picked up by AI, and elevates whatever material you post. So it's a cop-out and just cowardly not to actually do it. Oh, I can't make a difference, so I'm going to stay quiet. I can't make a difference, so I'm not going to get involved. But I'll go to a demonstration where I can remain anonymous. It's just cowardly. You want to make a difference? Here's the tool for making a difference. Social media and the internet is the most powerful tool you will ever have at your disposal to make a difference. Use it. And objectivists are not good at using it. They're not good at using it. They either feel like they have to write original content, and then it's a post that nobody ever reads. But if you'd actually posted a video of Ayn Rand, even without any comment, you would elevate it. Nobody films objectivist protests. Nobody cares. You guys have a delusion of grandeur if you think that demonstrations, people care about you going out and waving some signs, Ayn Rand is right, in front of the White House. All right, Andrew. J.D. Vance thumbing his nose at the Declaration of Independence involves a massive evasion of what life would be like without the rights recognized by it. He's attacking rights, yes. Does a collectivist have to end up doing so? Yeah, I mean, a collectivist ultimately cannot believe in individual rights. it's individual rights after all. It's not. It's individual, and they don't recognize the individual's right to his own life. They don't recognize an individual's right to live and to make decisions for himself. So, yeah, they have to turn against the Declaration. And they have. I mean, the National Conservatives are anti-Declaration of Independence. They're anti-Enlightenment, explicitly anti-Enlightenment. They hate the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is what's given us the left. The Enlightenment is globalist. The Enlightenment, all of this is about ultimately destroying the Enlightenment. Highly recommend when it comes out, Ankar Gate's talk from Okan about the why we're in the political state we're in and linking it to the Enlightenment. Andrew, too many men are good enough for capitalism to take hold. Too few men are good enough I was saying, that doesn't make any sense. Too few men are good enough for capitalism to take hold. Capitalism will make men better by effect, but in order to establish it, a certain amount of goodness must exist. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you can't impose capitalism from the top. People have to demand it, and you need you don't have a majority, but you need a certain quantity of people in order to do it. And is it nationalism if I don't think the U.S. should yield sovereignty to global organizations like the World Economic Forum, pushing U.S. companies into progressive policies like ESG? No, it's not nationalism. It's just rational and makes sense. By the way, the World Economic Forum has no governance status anywhere in the world. All they can do is persuade. All it can do is try to persuade. It can't enforce anything. It's not even like the World Health Organization or the World Trade Organization, which have some treaties associated. The World Economic Forum is just a forum. A forum that advocates for bad ideas. So ignore it. Advocate for good ideas. Argue against it. But no, objecting to the World Economic Forum, which I think I have done a number of shows on the World Economic Forum, is not nationalism. And the World Economic Forum has no governance. And nobody, as far as I know, nobody serious has ever claimed it should have governance over decisions made in the United States. It has the ability to persuade. And it argues for, as I said, really, really bad policies. Argue against them. Yeah, Milei did right at the World Economic Forum. He did a good speech there. I'm not sure he should have been there, but he did a good speech there. ESG is EU crap. No, ESG, I don't think ESG was invented in the EU. I think ESG is an American invention. But I might be wrong. But I think it was, wouldn't be surprised if it was invented at Wharton Business School, which is huge on social responsibility and stakeholders. All that stuff comes out of our universities and then gets repackaged in things like ESG and DEI and all that. Clark, an irrational culture is one which one needs to explain that different and foreign are not necessarily threats. We've returned to the primitive. Yeah, we've returned to kind of a primitive attitude of the different is a threat. The foreign is the enemy just because they're not us. This is tribalism. And Ayn Rand called tribalism, Ayn Rand considered tribalism particularly, racism as a form of tribalism, which is a particularly primitive form of collectivism, right? And racism is one of the lowest of lows in terms of human ideas of ideas. There's very little lower than racism. James, why are Luxembourg and Switzerland richer than the U.S.? I don't think they are. Switzerland is not richer. Luxembourg might be. Because of just the way it's measured and the number of people that live in Luxembourg. Luxembourg is a tiny little country. with very few people. We can look up what the population of Luxembourg is. Luxembourg population is, oh, come on, give us the population. Yeah, 666,000 people, less than 1 million people. A lot of what keeps Luxembourg afloat is banking and private equity that is less regulated than elsewhere. So it has a very high GDP per capita, even though that GDP is not necessarily owned by or attributable to people who actually live in Luxembourg. Switzerland has a little beneath the United States, or about the same as the United States. I think a little beneath the United States in terms of GDP per capita. Let's just see. Purchasing power adjusted. Let's see, versus USA. Yeah, if you adjust for purchasing power, Switzerland is higher than the United States in 2025. No, it's lower. Sorry, it's lower. People is projected to be around 74,000. U.S. is 89,000. So it's lower. So the United States is 89,000 according to this in 2025. Switzerland 74,000. So the U.S. is still richer on that basis. I think disposable income. I think the U.S. is let's see, disposable income. Yeah, higher. Disposable income in the U.S. is higher than Switzerland. So, no, the U.S. is richer than Switzerland on that basis, right? So they're not. They're very small countries or countries that have a lot of natural resources, or countries like Ireland where a lot of corporations are based, so their GDP counts what these corporations are doing, even though it doesn't really rebound to the standard of living of people in Ireland, have inflated. So if you have natural resources, they inflate the GDP numbers. But Luxembourg and Switzerland, at least Switzerland, is not as rich as the United States on a per capita basis, adjusting for purchasing power. Wes, thank you for the $50. Really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Liam says, is Trump's tariff game more about market manipulation to make his friends rich, or about nihilistic destroying his enemies? I think it's primarily the nihilistic, and then why not let his friends get rich? So I think the friends getting rich is a secondary benefit, not the primary. And I think generally the corruption for Trump is like a sweetener. It's like, why not? Compensates me for all the hassle of being president. Why shouldn't I be corrupt? But it's not what drives him. And that's part of what I wanted to get away from. What's going on right now is not just about Trump not being smart, or Trump being hateful, or Trump being angry, or Trump being corrupt. It's about a particular, ideology that rejects a whole bunch of people in the name of this nationalism. And Trump might not understand it. It might be manipulated by other people towards this. But that's what's really driving the whole thing. Doodle Bunny, what motivates you to work so hard to change the world, since by the time it changes for the better, you probably won't be around? Probably. For sure I won't be around. I enjoy doing it. I'm a communicator. I like communicating. What could be more interesting and more fun and more exciting than to communicate about the challenges the world faces, and the state of the world, and how to make it better. I also care about the world in a sense that as long as I'm alive, I care about what happens in the world, and I want to comment on it. I want to fight it. I want to change it because I care about it, because I live in it. And I care about people, and I care about the people that will live, after I'm gone, and my kids, my friends, my associates, people I like. And I'd like to believe and to think that we're heading in a more positive direction or better direction, or that the world that they will live in will be moderately better because of me, because of the work I do. But I would like to believe, just from my own sense of satisfaction, or that I am having an impact on what happens in the future. I can project that future. I'm a conceptual being that can project the future. So I don't just live in the present, in the sense that I can imagine what happens, what could happen down the road. And if I can have an impact and make what happens down the road better, I'd like to be involved in that. But look, I wouldn't do it if I didn't enjoy it, if the challenge wasn't interesting, if the debate wasn't stimulating, if it wasn't engaging, if I didn't learn, if it wasn't intellectually exciting. And it is. I like numbers. Thoughts on the surprise budget surplus? It's just 1 month. It comes from the fact that they had a huge amount of tariff income, because prices have not adjusted, so people have not reduced the amount of consumption of foreign goods yet. So they got the tariff. It's not sustainable because there's just not enough of it to cover all the expenses. So they raised taxes, and they got more revenue than they expected because they raised taxes. That's how you should think about it. They raised taxes. You paid for that. Whatever surplus they have is because of you. Now, maybe you need to raise taxes in order to get rid of the government deficit and reduce the debt in the short run so you can lower taxes later. But this is the stupidest, wrong tax to raise. Not your average algorithm. What are taking the courts so long to shut Trump down? Does Trump inner circle fear the courts in the slightest? Oh, what's taking it so long is the courts. It just takes time. You have to have a period of discovery. You have to argue the cases. A court then has to go back and think about it. They have to voice an opinion. Then it can get appealed. And then there's an appellate court. And it has to go through a whole process of debating and discussing and thinking about it. And then issues an opinion, and then it can be appealed to Supreme Court. Supreme Court has a particular schedule. It can only listen to so many cases in a term. So yeah, this is just how courts function. This is how it can do. Do they fear the courts? Yeah, I think they do. They worry about them. They probably got contingency plans to get around them ultimately. But yeah, I do think they fear them. They worry about them. Or maybe they're looking forward to it. It might be a way out, for example, in an immigration issue. It could be a way out for Trump. Not your average algorithm. How do we get more people to internalize the concept of individual rights? Americans have no idea what rights are and where they come from. Well, I mean, look, there's no option but to teach them. To talk in terms of rights. To discuss rights. This is, again, where I think having a big poster in front of the White House saying Ayn Rand was right, or rights are good, or individual rights, doesn't do it. You have to engage in actual discussion on on the cases and on the issues that are before the culture, and get your ideas out there and formulate them in terms of rights. And you have to link those rights to morality, and you have to convince them that morality should be egoistic, and only then can you make a dent. It's education, education, education. There are no shortcuts. As much as we would all like there to be shortcuts. John says, Jefferson was a blood and soil nationalist. Has Yaron ever read what he wrote about non-whites? He wanted open immigration of Muslims like Yaron. So John is, he's not an honest player here. And he's asked many questions over the years. At least he puts his money in his mouth. He doesn't just pollute the chat. But he's not honest. He knows, or he should know, because I've answered his questions about open immigration of Muslims over and over and over and over again over the years. And to still accuse me of being pro-open immigration of Muslims is just to be dishonest. It's just to be dishonest. To call Jefferson a blood and soil nationalist is to be dishonest. There was no blood and soil nationalists before, in the late 18th century. Sadly, Jefferson was a slave owner. Sadly, Jefferson held some racist beliefs. It's horrible. It's morally condemnable. One has to weigh the good and the bad in Jefferson, and there is bad. There is bad. So the fact that there was bad in Jefferson does not eliminate the fact that there was good in Jefferson. The fact that Jefferson expressed racist views and owned slaves does not mitigate what he wrote in the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. He wrote that. He signed that. He risked his life for that statement. And they have inalienable rights. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. All men. Not white men. Declaration of Independence does not say white men. So Jefferson had a contradiction. The reality that people like John, 250 years later, still hold those racist beliefs that Jefferson held, still latch on to the bad in Jefferson and ignore and negate the good in Jefferson is shameful and a disgrace. And you should feel shame that you are so reactionary that you would support the bad things in the founders, the mistakes that they made, the inconsistencies that they had. And by doing so, 250 years later, reject, stomp on their virtues and the good that they represented and the good that they did. You don't deserve them. Racism is one of the lowest forms of the lowest forms of human ideas, the lowest forms of human behavior. It is disgusting. It is despicable. And it doesn't get any better by calling it race realism. It's the same disgusting thing. So John has another question. The Naturalization Act of 1790 restricted citizenship to whites. The founders were what we would call race realists. Yaron is making stuff up. The founders were mixed. They had slaves. They permitted and sanctioned slavery after the country was founded. And the Naturalization Act of 1790 is a disgrace and a slap in the face of the Declaration of Independence. And they should be ashamed of themselves. But but that was 250 years ago. And there was a particular cultural context and a particular political context. But again, for you to hold those same ideas today, that is really despicable and disgusting. That you should really be ashamed of. Some people ask questions just because they want to be abused. All right, Gail, my friend today criticized me for saying a job should go to the best worker based on mutual win-win trade with the employer because I'm not biased for my son. Yeah, I mean, good for you. Shame on them. And yeah, this is why people perceive there to be constant conflicts between men, between individuals who are rational, because they don't understand what your ultimate long-term rational self-interest actually means. So they constantly will create conflicts between individuals, between people. Kim, you said the state should get involved in parents if parents don't educate their kids. How do you reconcile that with the objective issue that children don't have the same rights as adults? Well, children don't have the same rights as adults. That's why parents can get involved, right? The state can get involved, because if children had the same rights as adults, then the state could never get involved, right? But children don't have the same rights as adults. Therefore, some of those rights, in a sense, are the parents are responsible for the children. The parents are responsible for, in a sense, holding those rights in trust and protecting those rights. And part of that, you could argue, and I'm open to argument otherwise. This is not a strong belief that I have. And I don't think, don't educate your kids is too strong. Don't provide a minimal education. So I think not providing some minimal education, reading, writing, is child abuse. And the state should get involved in child abuse. Just like the state would get involved if you beat your kids, not providing them that minimum, the state should get involved. But I'm open to a different view on that. I think that's Leonard's position, or was Leonard's position in one of the podcasts that he did. It's just because if you don't give them even the basic tools, you're crippling them. But that's because children are not adults yet. All right, let's see. Hunter Grushus. I've seen firsthand enormous environmental tilt in the MAGA base. MAGA base is very mystical, and their conservatism has evolved to very mystical and not unlike the left. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I predicted it. It doesn't surprise me at all. They definitely, and they're environmentalists. Remember, the first environmentalist really were conservatives. The whole conservation movement of the pre-1960s was all conservatives. Teddy Roosevelt was the guy who created all the national parks. So it doesn't surprise me at all. You saw it in the rejection of Mike Lee's proposal to sell a tiny little fraction of, federally owned land. Hector, what happens to objectivist ethics if technology changes our sense of reality? Love the show, Yaron. Well, I mean, look, technology can't change our sense of reality. Technology can provide us more information about reality. It can refine our observation of reality. It's just like science does all the time. Like looking in a microscope, which allows us to see things in reality that we can't see with the naked eye, doesn't change ethics. Nothing about technology is going to change the fact that in order to survive, we have to use our mind. So it doesn't change anything significant. It changes the resolution with which we see the world. It gives us more information, more details about things that our normal senses, our natural senses can't. But that just enhances our knowledge. It doesn't change our means of survival. So it doesn't change our ethics one iota. Michael, suppose in the future you could be plugged into a game like Matrix. You could make yourself king or rich or a supermodel, etc. Would it be bad for your self-esteem, a form of escapism? No, not necessarily. It depends what you did. First of all, if it's a game, it could be quite entertaining and stimulating. As long as you didn't think that that was reality, as long as you didn't use that as a pretense to escape reality, then there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong in playing. There's nothing wrong in fantasizing. There's nothing wrong in playing games, in having an imagination, in sinking yourself into a life of a novel. So no, I mean, if you use that to replace your life in reality, then yes, then it will be a form of escapism and destroy self-esteem. But if you just view it as, okay, I'm going to spend an hour playing this game, yeah, that's great. Form of entertainment. Jason, since you asked, I know comics aren't your thing, and your aesthetic instincts lean highbrow. That's me, highbrow. But as a cultural footnote, Superman's so super he won't kill. That's the theme and part of the stories. Yeah, I think that's really bad. I think that's really bad. That's an element of altruism in the story. Peter Meribins, this is 2 Meribins. Thank you for uploading your awesome biology course and narrations on your YouTube channel. Oh, cool. So Meribins has a biology course. I didn't know that. So something she teaches, she taught. Maybe Meribins can tell us in the chat what she has uploaded on YouTube. I think other people would like to know. That would be interesting. Thank you, Peter. Neo. And what is the channel? Be good to know what the channel's name is. When religious people say they set the foundation for Western civilization, what do they exactly refer to? Everything. I mean, if you read Dominion, everything we have in the West, democracy, rights, the mixed economy, capitalism, everything was on the foundation of Christianity. You can find anything that we have in the modern world. You can find its roots in Christian theology. Abolition, the abolition movement was a Christian movement. The Enlightenment ultimately was founded in Christianity. That's what they argue, everything. I mean, just because they were in the background, just because they were there, there's no new thought. Everything has to be linked to Christianity. And of course, the Greeks didn't come before the Christians. Nobody can connect anything to Greeks. Neo says, do what Peter Schiff did and debate the public versus the 1%. Gave him millions of views long ago. Yeah, he did that during Occupy Wall Street. He went out to where they were, camped out and debated them there. It was brilliant. It was a brilliant thing. And says you can't just say Christianity was only the bad stuff. Why not? I mean, when Christianity dominated, all we had was bad stuff. And when we stopped having bad stuff, when we started to have good stuff, is when Christianity was sidelined. And it was slowly being replaced by Greek Aristotelian ideas. That's just history. Up until the Renaissance, there was very little good created in the Western world, in the Christian world. Very little. It's only with the reemergence of Aristotelian ideas and the rejection of, Middle Ages and Dark Ages art with a renaissance of Greek spirit in art that you get anything of value being created in the West, in the so-called Christian world. So Christianity is negative. It's a negative force in the world. It was a negative force in the West. It's a negative force that retards progress, retards civilization. It's an anti-civilization force. That doesn't mean that nothing good was created within Christianity. It just means that overall, it is a retarding negative force. I am very anti-Christian and very anti-Jewish. Judaism is the same. Qua religion, it is not a positive force in the world. It's a negative force in the world because it retards progress. It distracts you from engaging and focusing. No good things have come of it. It means nothing to say good things came out of it. Why? Because people in the Renaissance rebelled against it, so it came out of it? I mean, that's silly. It's non-causal. Nothing good on scale came out of it. Hunter, to Yaron's point on sharing content, I implore you all to share his talk from 2002 on YouTube. It's called The Israeli-Palestinian Conflict, What is the Solution? That was a long time ago. I implore you to watch my more recent talks on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But the theme of dominion is silly. It's a well-written, silly book. It's a well-written, silly book. It's not a good book from the perspective of truth and from the perspective of theme. I did a show on this. Dominion, that is the theme, but it's a stupid theme. It's ridiculous. You know, it draws no causal conclusions. It's wrong about many of the assertions it makes. It claims that nobody had ever advocated against slavery until Christianity, which is just not true. There are many Greek thinkers who advocated against slavery. There's literally nothing in Christian thought that did not originate in pre-Christian thought. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, Dominion is a really, 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 really bad book. I mean, not in its writing. Its writing is very good. The stories are fascinating. The stories are really interesting. It's a lot of fun to read. I read it cover to cover, and it's a good read. But it's wrong. Fundamentally, crucially wrong, because it gets causation wrong. Causation to it, it's a billiard board causation. Because Christianity came before the Enlightenment, Christianity caused the Enlightenment. But that's non-thinking. Literally non-thinking. Hopefully, objectivists can do better than that and can read it critically. And I see that it just doesn't make sense. You've also got a brilliant theory of history that Ayn Rand articulated for the New Intellectual, for example. And that should guide how you read books like that. Hector, can we do a rematch live in-person debate with Yaron and Richard Wolff post-COVID? I'm not that really interested in debating Richard Wolff, but no, I'm not saying that about Greece. I'm not saying because Greek came first, you get that. I'm saying there are particular ideas from Greece that changed the world. Particular. There are no particular ideas from Christianity that led to the Enlightenment. The particular ideas that led to the Enlightenment are not from Christianity. They're from Greece. The particular ideas that led to the Renaissance are not from Christianity. They're from Greece. Not because Greece created before, not because Greece was dominant. It wasn't dominant. Christianity was dominant. But because there were thinkers who could think independently of the cultural milieu around them and could pluck good ideas out of the past and apply them and implement them. That is a completely different argument than the argument in Dominion. It's a completely different way of thinking about causality, and it's a completely different way of thinking about how individuals, thinkers, how individual artists, how individuals function. Dominion just assumes that they're just sponges for the culture around them, and everything they spout is just a product of that Christian culture. It's just not true. Now, are they influenced by that culture? Sure, but influenced for the negative. Would Spinoza have been a better thinker, a better philosopher? Had he not been influenced by his Jewish upbringing and by his Christian environment? Yes. Would every one of the great philosophers being better. Yes. All right. We'll have to do causality in history another time, because Anne does not get it. Yes, Aquinas brought more reason into Christianity. That's right. That's right. And what held it back from totally embracing reason? What held the culture back from totally embracing reason? What held Aquinas back from totally embracing reason and establishing an enlightenment 500 years earlier and having capitalism before that? Christianity. So you had the good, Greece, and you had the bad, Christianity, and Aquinas brought a little bit of good into Christianity, and the reason that little bit of good didn't become all-encompassing good immediately is Christianity didn't allow it. So Christianity is bad. Reason is good. And Aquinas was a good guy because he was willing to put aside some of his Christianity in order to embrace some reason and bring that reason in. It's not as Christianity allowed him to bring reason in. He brought the reason in spite of Christianity. Neo, your recent views on immigration echo the analysis you did on mass shooters. Both explore underlying motives and manifesto reasoning and manifest reasoning in a similar way. Thank you. I think that's a real compliment. I appreciate that. I try to bring the same kind of reason, evidence, based analysis to everything that I do. You know, grounded in reality, have facts at my disposal, and bring a philosophical context to it. Yeah, and I'm sorry, you just don't get it, and you don't get Dominion, and you don't get what I'm saying. But Dominion is not good. It's a very, very destructive book because it doesn't get causation right. It attributes all good to Christianity when it's exactly the other way around. It's in spite of Christianity, all these good things happen. They happen in spite of Christianity. Thomas Aquinas brings a reason into Western civilization in spite of Christianity. The Enlightenment happens in spite of Christianity. And Dominion does a very good job in whitewashing all the persecution of all the people for hundreds of years by Christianity. People who tried to civilize it and weren't successful. Christianity is bad. I am, not Ayn Rand, not objectivism, me. I am, in that sense, a militant atheist. Faith, and particularly religion, and particularly Christianity, because it's dominated, is bad. Islam is worse today. Certainly, Islam is much worse today. And Judaism has always been bad. They are all bad. They are all negative forces in the world out there. If they're good forces and they are bad forces, religion, Christianity, Islam, Judaism are all on the side of bad forces. That's me. Love it or hate it, it is what it is. All right, guys, I will see you. Members, I will see you tomorrow. You can become a member, so you can join us tomorrow. You can become a member the next 24 hours, and you will be there, or fewer than 24 hours. But anyway, I will see the members tomorrow. The rest of you, I'll see you on Monday.